Hey guys. So it has been a hot minute since we have done one of these podcasts. We used to do them all the time. It Takes Grace was the name of it, and it's just life has just been busy, and we've just kind of not done one in a while. And so today we were having this great conversation, and I was like, this should be something we talk about on the podcast. So that's why we just wanted to kind of come on and just share some things that we've been kind of talking about lately, and just some things we've learned and things like that. And it kind of came from a conversation that we were having with some really good friends the other night. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the conversation started because we were talking about relationships. We saw like a 10-year challenge, and we got to see everybody's pictures of where they were and where they are now. You know, it's just kind of funny, kind of interesting. I actually started looking up some pictures of my own, so I was going to post some because I like that, and it's pretty fun. And we started talking about marriages because that's one of the things that's very important to us. We try to put a lot of effort into our marriage. And there's a lot of things we do personally that we found over the years that works for us. Because we've also found that we did a lot of things like, conferences and studies and all that kind of stuff. And not everything is perfect for everybody. So we kind of made things more that suited us, that worked for us. And hopefully you've learned that too, that, you have to kind of have a lot of communication and then find what works best for your marriage. And so we had a conversation with some old friends about the 80-20. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So I kind of wanted to share it with you. Maybe you've heard this before, but about how sometimes when you've been married for a while, you start to grow apart and you let a lot of things happen and you don't resolve them. And you kind of get to a point where you don't really know anymore what the problems are. You just know they're problems. And a lot of times people will leave their spouses and it's kind of like an 80-20 thing, right? They have 80% of what they want, but they go after that 20%. And then once the newness wears off, they start to realize what they had was so much better. And it would be so much better. I meet people a lot of times who will put a lot into this. They'll almost change to be a new person with their new spouse. And I always wonder if they would put that kind of effort into their original marriage, what difference that would have made. Now, I'm not trying to say what you should or shouldn't do at all, just observation on a conversation we were having. And, I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought they had some pretty good insights. And that's what we really like, is to hear good insights. I've always toyed around the idea, of like writing a book and talking to everybody I can about what's real in the real world, what really works, and whether people accept it or not. That's not even the point. The point is you have a good marriage and you're working on it. So we've kind of learned over the years when we need to step in, things we need to do, and what works for us.
Well, and it's funny, just this week I was having a conversation with a member of our church, and she's been married way longer than we have. She has grown children. And we were talking about, as women, that idea of submitting to our husband's leadership. And that was something that I bucked for a really long time. And I actually did a women's study that said that because of the fall, that was one of the things that came with that, was that Eve would kind of always have that tendency to want to lead and to want to do these things, but she would have to, I don't know, it's kind of that like give and take thing. And it wasn't until years into our marriage when I realized how freeing it is as a woman to have your husband lead, and we talk about everything together. It's not like he makes every decision for our family or whatever. Like, it's always, we kind of talk about those things, but ultimately, like, he's the head of our household, and so that's what we've tried to do. But I've not always made it easy for him, to be honest. But I've realized over the years just how freeing that is for me, as a woman, as his wife, and to trust him in his leadership, and, even when things don't work out, to still, love him through that, and us to grow through that. And because I sure make a lot of mistakes. So anyway, there's just different things that we were kind of talking about. And another friend of mine, we had a conversation recently where I told her that one of the things that, and this don't get a visual, but like one of the things that we love to do is take a bath. Like, literally, when we were searching for houses to buy, that was one of the criteria. Like, it had to have a big bathtub. Because this started years ago, it was our way. When we had small kids, we'd put them to bed or whatever, and we would go into the bathtub with no phones and just turn the lights off, have candlelight or whatever, and just sit and talk to one another. And it was just quality time to have conversation. And y'all, so many times that for me, I'm not, I know I talk a lot, but I'm not great at communicating about hard stuff. So Herbie kind of sometimes has to force me to like talk about these kind of things, because you know what happens when you don't talk about them. Then time just goes by, things fester, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And so that's not healthy for your marriage at all. So that time of being together and having a discussion was super important for us. And still is. It still is. It's something we try to do at least once a week, is what our goal is.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
We started doing that a long time ago, and I think it's a good idea. We like Bob Goff, right? And I heard Bob Goff say one time when him and his wife would talk, they would play catch. And because you can't look at your phone, you can't watch TV, you can't focus on anything, or you get smacked in the face with the ball, right? They throw the ball, catch it. And that's where they talk, because you have to stay focused on the person in front of you, or you get a broke nose, right? So for us, we prefer to do the bath, right? And it's really hard to be mad at somebody in the bathtub, right? You know, you get in the bathtub, you have no other choice but to just kind of sit there and talk things out. There's nothing there to distract you. Well, maybe. But it's the good things about marriage that distract you. And some people, that's what they need to get back to anyway.
Well, and a friend of mine that I was telling her this, she was like, "Oh, that sounds like that's something you do to lead to like sexy time," or whatever's how she phrased it. And I was like, well, sometimes it may, but not all the time. Sometimes it's literally just, we both are cold all the time. So sometimes it's a way to get warm and to just relax and to just have no distractions. And honestly, it's a place to be very vulnerable, because, I mean, you're both laying in the bathtub, you know what I mean? Like, you're pretty vulnerable in that place. So we've had some really good conversation through that. And so y'all, some of you are probably listening to this going, okay, I'm not doing that. And that may not be something that works for you. Like, maybe you do better when it's across the table at a restaurant. You have to go out to a restaurant. For many years, we couldn't afford date nights, so we had to create our own, you know what I mean? So, you know, we love to do that any chance we can, but sometimes in a marriage you have to get creative. And especially when you've got younger kids, or golly, teenage kids who never go to bed. I mean, like, your life goes through all these different seasons of life. And so sometimes you can get, and I know this, y'all, as a mama, I get very wrapped up in my children's lives, and I can be very focused on them and their needs and all those kind of things. And it's not that I forget that my husband has needs as well, or that, you know what I mean, but it becomes your priority, you know? But you got to make time for one another. That's with any relationship. You got to cultivate it.
And you can't ever say, look, that's not for me, but not be in a good place in your marriage. You need to rethink that. If you're not in a good place, you need to figure out how, and nothing should be off the table within, you know, certain limits. But if it's important to you, it's worth working hard for. And those things come easier and easier the more you do them. And you've got to get to those points. You know, I hope you're in a good place, but if you're not, you know, you need to put forth the effort to get there. And however that looks, don't be afraid to do it, because the payoff is worth the hard work. A good marriage is way better than a bad one, not just for you, but all the little people in the house too. Your family desperately needs you together. So,
yeah, that's true.
So, you know, I don't know, maybe you're in a good place, maybe you're not, but I think we all can be in both of those sometimes, right? Even the best marriages have their ups and downs. So really focusing on each other. I think the love languages are perfect for couples, you know, really knowing, because so often, especially early in a marriage, we always kind of, we do what suits us. So we'll give like we think is a great gift or a great idea, and to them they're just like, eh. And you're like, well, I'm not doing anything else for you if you're unappreciative. But in reality, it's not that they're unappreciative. That's just not their love language, and they just didn't get excited as much about it as you did. So you need to learn what makes them happy. You know, whether you like to clean or not, maybe they do, and that means something to them, whether it means something to you.
Well, and what we found is you tend to do what your love language is for the other person. So for years, I felt guilty that my love language is acts of service. So I love for Herbert to bring me flowers. I love for him to give me whatever, but I'd much rather come home to he has vacuumed or mopped the floors or cleaned the bath. I mean, like those are huge to me because those are stressors on me. So like if it's like it's hanging over my head when I love having a clean house or having laundry done or whatever. So for me, if he has done that, then it's like it takes a weight off of me that's not something else on the list that I need to accomplish. So that's a huge thing for me. And I used to feel guilty about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, God, what a terrible person you are that acts of service is your love language. But then I realized like, well, it just is the same way physical touch is his love language and quality time. And I see it a lot in my children now that they're older, you know, the things that they thrive on, the words of affirmation. And like I gave Blythe this very small thing the other day that I had just a little ring that I had seen and thought about her. And it brought her to tears. And I was shocked because, you know, I thought she would roll her eyes at it. I really did, y'all. I did not think she would be that excited to get that little thing. But she really appreciated it and told me how much she loved it. So, you know, even in those relationships, you know, you're constantly learning. And I think that is part of what makes a good marriage is that you don't stop making it great. You know, like it's something that you constantly have to work on. But like Herbie said, the work is so worth it in the end. And I'm a stubborn person, and I don't know. I wish that I had learned these things earlier in my marriage so that we wouldn't have gone through the rough things that we went through. But I know there was growth through all of that. We were having a conversation earlier this week about some counseling that I got when I was 40 years old for some things that happened when I was a child, y'all. And I hate that I waited until I was 40 years old to be free from some of that junk that I had inside. And so that's another thing that I would just say to you, to please don't ever think that you don't need certain things, or like, well, gosh, we must really be in a bad place if we think we need to go to counseling, or if we think, I think there's just so many stigmas around things this time of day in our world. I don't know why. But, you know, seek what you need to make things great. Like, don't feel like that's a failure. To me, it's more of a failure to just quit and give up and both of you go your separate ways, you know. And I've seen that happen to marriages that they were high school sweethearts, and now 20 years in, they're like, yeah, we're done. What? And sometimes I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't times that, you know, it's just not going to work or whatever. But I've always told Herbie, for us, you better exhaust every freaking effort that you possibly can before you quit. I mean, that's just how I feel.
We kind of packed up our whole lives and we moved because of Grace. Grace is a person, right? We're always chasing Grace because Grace has a name. His name is Jesus, right? And one of the best sayings is get used to different. And that's what we love. If it's not working, it's time to change. There's nothing wrong with different, especially if it helps, right? If it looks like Grace, I would chase it. So I hope you're encouraged by this today, because we had a lot of you on our minds because we care so much about you. And maybe you're not on our mind, but you're on God's mind, and this video is for you. So work on it and seek help. If you don't know what to do, look for help. Look for somebody who can really pour into you. I bet you're surrounded by great people who love and care about you. Don't ever be afraid, and no one can read your mind. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. You know, we look for help all around us. We can't do anything alone. We're not even trying to do anything alone. We love the family and all the support system and all the people that care about us that we're surrounded with, because God is so good to have given us that. We're not going to waste it or take it for granted. You know, at the end of this video, we would love for you to maybe put something in the comments about maybe some good advice you could give us. What things have you learned that you really invest in your marriage that you've gotten huge payoffs for, especially if it's different and other people think you're crazy for doing it? I certainly will not. If it works for you, I'd love to hear about it, because I love different. I think we should always be looking for some new ways to spice things up. I love keeping it spicy. That's one of my favorite words. I think you should always keep everything spicy. Everything you do, your marriage, your parenting, your church, everything needs to stay spicy. Don't let it get dull. You know, one of the fruits of the Spirit is joy. If there's no joy, there ain't no Jesus in it. So just remember that too. So
yeah, that's true. So yeah, if there's things that you do, let us know. Put it in the comments. And then other people can read it too and share it. So we would love to hear that. And then we would also love for you to know that we're always here. If you ever need a sounding board of no judgment, just like people who will love you and listen to you. And if you want advice, we'll give it. If you don't, we'll just sit there and shut up. Like you just, we're always available. That is our heart's desire, is to see you have a good marriage. I think one of the reasons that our girls, Madison's in a good relationship. She's dated this guy for a couple of years now. Blythe has not found anybody yet. And I think, honest to God, the bar's been set high for them. And we tell them that, like, we haven't always been these people, you know what I mean? Like we had to get to this point. But the kind of man that my girls look for is their daddy, and he has a lot of amazing qualities. And so the standard is high, and I don't want them to drop that standard. I want them to look for somebody like that. I try to remind them they're probably not going to find it in a teenage boy, but they are out there, and it's worth the wait. And so if you're in that phase of life where you're waiting for your spouse and for God to bring you that, that's not an easy season either. And I know that can be difficult, but just know that be praying now, because God knows exactly who they are. So be praying for that person. I've prayed for the spouses my kids will have since I was pregnant with them. And I know that God will bring them to them. And I've told him it won't be perfect. Everything just won't be like butterflies and rainbows all the time. But it's so worth it in the end, and just staying with it, just putting in the effort and staying with it.
Yeah, I mean, what more can you say? We're proud of you guys. I mean, if you're in it and you're working hard to make it better, and that's a good thing. I got 2 messages for you to leave you with. So 1, don't ever forget, keep it spicy. 2, go take a bath.
All right, we love y'all, and it takes grace. Don't ever forget that either. Talk to you again soon.
See you next time.